Welcome to another Quantum Conversation, brought to you by AcousticHealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. Welcome to this quantum conversation. Today we are talking about embodying the divine human, the quantum divine human, and awakening humanity's arc of grace. We are here with Reverend Devi Grace, who is a beautiful soul on a powerful mission for New Earth. She is an ordained Gnostic minister, an Essene bishop, a Kundalini yoga instructor, and she is with the Divine Union Academy. We're going to learn about her story, which is fascinating because we've heard about walk-ins. We've talked about walk-ins, and Rev Devi is a multiple walk-in. Devi, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. A pleasure to connect with your community.
This is a powerful time on our planet. We're going to talk about the energetics that are going on and what we can expect for humanity as we become the quantum divine human. First, let's talk about you and your story. We're absolutely fascinated with walk-in experiences, and you've had a multiple of those experiences. 5. Yes. Now that's amazing. Let's start there. Tell us about that story and how you became aware of yourself as a walk-in. What was that like?
Well, the foundation of all of these walk-ins really is the picture behind me, right? Mother Earth. And so she's going through this quantum awakening. And you can imagine that the walk-ins started millions and millions of years ago, when all of the Star Nation ancestors pledged, right, their sacred service to this Earth star as she goes through her metamorphosis in the Mayan cosmology. It's the Hunabku, the galactic butterfly. And so my walk-ins are not an individual experience. They are connected to the morphogenetic unified field of the whole planet. And so I designed this with the cosmology or the cosmosophy of the whole planet, even before, quote unquote, my first arrival came in. And therefore, the other component that I'll preface is that this is only possible through the oversoul. Don't know if other speakers have spoke of that, like soul group constellation intelligence. And so the first walk-in happened in childhood, and it was ordained to impact a lot of the issues that we were having worldwide with the male and female energy in the family systems. So from the lineage of, family systemic constellations or, Bert Hellinger work, the galactic family could see the issues that were affecting all of human systems that were rooted or originated from the breakdown of the nucleus of the family unit, the mother-father energy, the masculine, feminine, maternal, and paternal ancestries were so incongruent with that original true template, right, for sacred balance, that we got recruited, the walk-ins got recruited to step in and intervene so that we could have the purification of ancient levels of ancestral karma that were just on repeat mode, right? And you had basically too many starseeds on the planet that weren't able to fulfill their destinies, right? We had all these starseeds coming in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and they just couldn't get into that dharmic expression because there was way too much ancestral, right, baggage. And so it was like, what is going to be the most effective way to bring assistance to all of those, indigos and starborns and get them, fully operational in what they're really here to accomplish without having to repeat this ridiculous, redundant, reincarnation cycle. And so that's why I was chosen to sequence these walk-ins in 5 stages from 1977 to 2021. So it's a good chunk of time. And you can think of it in terms of my human body could only accommodate so much light at any given juncture. So the first walk-in was at age 4, and that was predominantly dealing with the wounded masculine or toxic, false father, right? Tyrant energy archetypally on the planet. And then the second walk-in was, how did that distorted masculine energy then impact the feminine principle? You know, how come so many mothers, right, or unable to live the truth of their sacred feminine, right, integrity and authenticity in the family unit? And so then we had most of these wounded female lineages going into submission, right, or some level of settling for less because they weren't actually living their highest self in their human family units. And so we really lost connection to the divine mother and the divine father in our human heritage. And then you have all of these awakened souls incarnating into these very, what you would call broken family units. And therefore, I technically had a full near-death experience at age 4, and then another full near-death experience at age 10. And you can think of kind of like my end-of-life review council meetings was about how to heal the wounded masculine on the planet in 1977, and then how to heal the wounded feminine on the planet in 1983. The masculine went into this very aggressive template, domination, right, manipulation and control, and then the female aspects were going into, you know, survival and self-deprecation or self-denial or service, right, or servitude. They weren't really expressing their goddess power, you know. And then the lineages of the divine mother creatrix were receding, right, and women were becoming more in their human identities or their human personalities and fitting into their societal roles and not actually standing for the beauty, truth, and goodness of the radiance of, you know, the beloved within them. And then when we start moving into the more activated, like restorations of the sacred marriage on the planet after 2012, you know, 2013, then in 2014, this dimension of, you know, we call it the moksha, you know, the transcendent ecstasy of all creation, then started moving into that matrimony of the divine mother and the divine father. And me becoming a manifestation, or me becoming an expression of that divine blueprint of the sacred marriage on behalf of the whole planet, not just for myself. And those roots, if you think of this as a cosmic tree, started rooting in on that 7-7 stargate. So it was July 7th, 2014, or 777. And that's when we really started bringing in the Hieros Gamos, or the alchemical marriage ceremonies for the whole planet. And then by the time that finally landed, right, what you would call the grid systems of the whole planet, then we started to move in more in 2019, or 5 years later, bringing in the galactic level of that sacred marriage. So we had to bring in, you know, like the Shiva and the Shakti and the Yeshua and the Magdalena, you know, and the Buddha and the Tara, and the Abba and the Ema and the, you know, Aleph and the Tav and the Alpha and the Omega, all of those beloveds, right? All of those twin flames, all of those twin rays. So for about 5 years, we were bringing all this twin flame, twin ray energy into the planet. And then it was like, okay, now that we've laid that, you know, bedrock foundation, in 2019, we really started bringing in what's called a coatomic, or the galactic Hieros Gamos. That's a new energy of this quantum, massive, multidimensional energy of both love and grace to penetrate into the challenges that we've seen with so many twin soul couples that don't make it, right, or divine counterparts. They encounter just a lot of cultural resistance and family resistance, or human identity aspects that just can't reconcile, right? The quantum leap that's needed to go into that level of service. And so it was like this whole new twin flame template started infusing into the planet in 2019, which is the galactic beloveds. And a coatomic is that quantum physics of no longer identifying with a person as your sacred reflection. It's now realizing that this quantum intergalactic divine union is this plasmic field of photonic love energy, and it's consuming actually the body of the entire biosphere. So that's when you started seeing like Gaia and the Grain Man, right? These Beltane ceremonies in 2019 really started going interstellar Beltane or interstellar, maypole, and bringing down just a huge sacred sexual energy for the replenishing and the restoration of the ecology of the whole planet, because it was in such a crisis. And then in 2021, it started to then activate what you would call into the belly or the womb of the whole planet. And it's kind of like, once those foundational layers were cleaning up all of the grid systems, the ley lines, the dragon lines, as Shekina and Sananda basically say, the geo-divinity circuits of the whole planet. Once all of that wreckage or fracturing or disconnection, right, has been ameliorated and cleansed and washed free, then there was actually like fertile cosmic soil in the body of Mother Earth, Pachamama, Pachatata, as they say down in South America. And there was room basically for these higher interstellar codes to then begin making love to the whole planet. And here we are in 2023 with about 2 years of what you would call galactic planetary tantra, right? That's been permeating and pouring into not just the human family system, into every species, into all the animals and all of the endangered species and all of the environmental damage and wreckage. It's just really powering up this Earth star to begin to retake her rightful place as we prepare for the Earth changes. So there was no separation between these 5 walk-in upgrades, right? As a person that didn't include the larger divine blueprints or larger templates or larger energy activations that were pouring or drenching or saturating into the whole planet. And I know that's a really huge framework. And so I'm really a Gaian walk-in. My nickname is Speaking Tree of Life for Gaia. So I stepped into surrogation for the whole planet, because it's really our galactic relatives or our star family guardians that have the power to intercede on behalf of the very destructive forces that have attempted to, siphon so much life force from the planetary reservoir, right? And utilize it for their own purposes. And call them, archons or, separation matrix, whatever. There was a previous agenda on the planet that wasn't, envisioning the human race to be sovereign. And so how that relates then to this planetary liberation, the planetary emancipation, is then you have the removal of all of these negative high frequencies that were like cutting the human race off from accessing their embodied highest self, or their embodied, 22 strand activated DNA, let alone the 144 strand, right? So that there is this quickening of the marriage of the human body temple and its miraculous, multidimensional spirit or soul or eternal essence, and the dropping of all of those accoutrements that keep the human race so programmed, right, in their mundane activities and unable to reach up and reclaim that higher promise or intent or dharmic principle so that we can move into what you would call those biological ascension timelines. So the whole purpose is to get the planet free, right? Shake off all the riffraffs that were attempting to misuse her Shakti, right? And then once we got the planet free, then we can start cleaning up the distortions that the inhabitants, right, have been struggling with for thousands of years. And that's the simplest way that I can say, hi, this is what me and my teams have been up to for 5 decades now.
Oh, Devi, you are so wonderful. What it's almost bodhisattva energy. I know many of us watching have taken a vow of that as well. So, all right, what a beautiful synopsis of your walk-ins and what's happening for the earth. And you are a Gaian. You are here for Gaia, and your story actually resonates so deeply in all of us. I know it does. So, wow, there's so much to go there. When we're talking about the removal of negative high frequency that was keeping the humans from accessing this higher self and embodiment from the organic ascension timelines, now what needs to be done? And I say this because in 2022, actually, looking back at your timeline, we all know what happened in 2020 and the upgrade that happened there. But then things picked up in 2021 and 2022. Personally, I woke up on that first day of the year, January 1st in 2022, and I looked around and I felt the energy. It was as if everything had changed. The old rules no longer apply culturally, socially, religiously, legally. None of those rules applied. It was only our memory of those rules that was keeping everything in place. I had that epiphany.
Yes.
Then that year of 2022, for me personally, was the most transformational year of my life. There was an activation within me of joy, of happiness, of love that was really incredible and beautiful. And
passion.
And passion. But yet there was a numbing, at the same time, we saw some people being stunned by the energy, like knowing they needed to do something and step up, but there was an incubation period of like just waiting it out, where this year it feels like things are rolling and there's breakthroughs even after this year's solstice in the summer, that there's been an acceleration of people being clearer on what it is that they want to do and bring forward on the planet. So that's all really beautiful. And I share that just as a perspective from our audience, because it really reflects what's happening in the collective. So with that, I can hear our audience members with some questions. There's two. One is, I'm going to say both of them now so we can pick up the conversation wherever you see fit to answer. One is, what do we need to do then with this? What do we do with this energy? I know many in the spiritual community, they're like changing their relationships, even their spouses. They're like, right, things like you mentioned, things are just kind of shifting and moving about. So what are we here to do? How can we each anchor in this light, this multidimensionality of who we are? How can we bring that further? And then the flip side is, when we look out at the world, is that just a simple reflection of that which still needs to be cleared? Because it's getting hairy out there. It's like this program of divide and conquer continues to run so deeply. So two questions in one, both flip side, but wow, what are we to do in the light?
Well, basically, I'm an oracle for the mother father source code.
Okay.
And therefore, what I have to share, I could never take credit for. I've been initiated with them through, thousands and thousands, right, of galactic shamanic ceremonies. And so they would like to create some suggestions, right, for all of their divine children. Once we realize that we are unconditionally loved, not on an intellectual level, on a cellular level, then the healing of that ancient split that has been hidden in the unconscious and subconscious, right, body mind of the species, of somewhere not trusting love, and shutting down or creating what you would call body armor. And it's very sophisticated and it's very sneaky, because where a lot of people are stuck is in a spiritual ego. They're totally innocent. They're not intentionally attempting to relate to divinity from a spiritual intellectualization. However, they don't actually have access to that wisdom in their bodies, right? And that's not an evaluation, and that's certainly not a criticism. It's just most people have not surrendered yet into the soma of the divine truth of all this other spiritual work that they've been doing, predominantly with their upper chakras and predominantly, right, with that multidimensional mind. And so the Divine Mother and the Divine Father would say, like, great, awesome. Thank you for remembering these essential principles. Now we're going to ask the bravest of courageous, right, noble, holy warrior principles of you to literally face that core wound. Because that core wound that you don't know, even the brightest don't know that they don't know their core wound, has been keeping you, right, in some level of disassociation or some level of disembodiment that you just haven't been brave enough to admit to yourself. And there's no judgment here, because these are ancient wounds. And when I had that end of life review and I saw basically just how many thousands of years, right? You've got the wounded paternal issues and the wounded maternal issues. I was like, ooh, this is pretty long standing, right? Like if there's a groove or a conditioning there or a patterning. And so people may purify their own karma, right? They talk about zero pointing their Akashic records. And it's like, oh, congratulations, you still have your ancestral database, right? So the core wound will enable us to be that hero or be that Shiro of our quest for the Holy Grail within us. And that's reclaiming our wholeness. And that's actually being able to reclaim those shadow aspects or those shadow soul fragments that may be split off and disassociated maybe 162 generations ago. And that you inherited, right, that schism from, right, the family line. And so we're moving into transpersonal purification. It's not your karma. Okay, if you look at it from the cosmic perspective, some of these templates, right, of separation or polarity or duality are a collective miasm, right, or a collective programming. And that's why we love the mythology of like a Neo and Trinity, right, and Trinity resurrections. And you just really have to stand up, right, to what's going on behind the scenes, because as Dr. Jacqueline Hobbs basically says, there are systems of artificial authority that would like to see those old patternings recapitulate over and over and over again, which creates what you would call global conflict. So if you'd like to see the end of external conflict, right, or warfare, we must heal the breakdown of the mother-father holy unions inside of our deepest shadow side, the unfinished business of the human family shadow is what's then holographically, right, reassembling itself in these large-scale, global, aggressive, violent jockeying, right, for positions of power in the old system that's dying. So as this old system is dying off, as James O.D. said, hospice of the old, we're the midwife of the new, except you cannot access a genuine quantum unified field if you haven't dealt with your shadow feminine and shadow masculine ancestral wounds. Not possible. Otherwise, you're going to have a spiritual bypass. Okay. And you think, oh, yes, I'm an initiated high priest or high priestess of, whatever the lineage is, and it's all great. And yet it's not all the way down beneath the navel, right? In those hips, in that pelvic girdle, because that's where most people have not fully descended into the roots of the cosmic tree of life in their own body, because there's too much pain of cellular memory of the breakdown of the beloveds across the ages. This is where we get into the purification of the ancestral curses, the ancestral hexes, and the misuse of magical power. The greatest blockage that we've seen to divine union beloveds being able to succeed is there's some kind of piggyback energy that's attempting to interrupt, right? And so you never get to see that collective restructuring of all of these different sacred union couples being able to organize into leadership cooperatives, right? You see individuals rise, but they're still only functioning, right, as a unit rather than what we would call the restoration of the sacred union beloveds as a social core value. The destiny path is often only accessible or available in sacred union with your true divine counterpart. And in order to attract that true and authentic, at least twin ray, there's just too many complications with the twin flame, then we got to deal, right, with the challenges that have bogged down the transgenerational traumas that no one's been able to reach yet. So this generation has such an epic invitation being provided to be brazen in the best possible way to go into that territory that no one has been able to successfully, completely, right, cleanse. Causal root core. What would it be like if individuals and couples said, I'm going to reach into the most entrenched levels of separation consciousness in my genetic record, in those archives of my DNA and RNA, because I realize that if I have that breakthrough, and if this beloved that I'm partnered with has this breakthrough at the level of a quantum metamorphosis, and I'm going to create those levels of grace, right? The wind beneath the wings for other family systems and other soul groups to get free. So it's a huge leadership invitation of, we're not asking for your individual self-actualization anymore, dear ones. The destiny of the human species is being challenged right now by all of these other systems that want things or desire things to stay the same. And we are being so bold as to extricate ourselves out of that old orientation where there is a victimizer and a victim, where on some level it's not what we call in sacred economics a quadruple bottom line. Somebody has to win, right, at the game of life, and therefore, some segment of the population on a world scale would then have to suffer their needs not being met because somebody is attempting to manipulate, right, the landscape in their favor. So the only way we are going to be able to stand up to that kind of, as you said, large scale chaos is putting down these root systems of reclaiming that original template of the Trinity. And it's no longer, a Vesica Pisces. We got to kind of like graduate out of all of those two-pronged approaches to the wholeness of creation and move into what we would call the tri-wave and this 12-sphere tree of life. And so it's no longer feminine, masculine. It's feminine, masculine alchemy through this trinitized grace. And that is the surrendering of all of our spiritual belief systems that we've been so indoctrinated into thinking that those are the highest frequencies, right, of ascension, where actually they're kind of got a glass ceiling, right? And they don't allow that full trinitized grace of the Mother and the Father and then the alchemy to get in and scrub out the bottom of the barrel. And so we're moving into a radical reevaluation of even our most treasured spiritual belief systems. Because if those treasured spiritual belief systems were placed there by very, very intelligent negative high frequency, 6D, 7D, 8D, 9D, 10D, 11D, 12D, until we get into what we will call the 1313 stargates, you're still going to have some form of a destructive influence attempting to meddle things up on a global scale. My apologies for being so unconventional in my blatant honesty. However, I say this with the purity of intent. Sorry if I'm rattling some people's spiritual cages. You won't really see the emancipation of slavery on the planet until we actually discuss where we've been hijacked, right? By seeming pathways of liberation that still have back doors. So number one, how do we clean out the back door, right, in our ancestry? And how do we clear out the back door in these old archetypes that just say that the Vesica Pisces is the ultimate, right, unification? Well, it's not, because it'll end in entropy. And that sucks. However, breakdown, breakthrough. So this is a radical quantum trinitized grace that is the galactic sacred marriage, and that won't allow those negative high frequencies to slip in right through those hidden back doors, if that translates. So maybe you can ask some questions to now begin simplifying that mouthful, because I know it's unfamiliar terminology, and I apologize for jargon that maybe you're unfamiliar with. However, trust me, your heart of hearts does resonate with the frequency of what's being spoken, even if the terminology is not so familiar for you listening, right, side of your humanity. So how would we begin to simplify this whole gestalt that they gave us? Because that was not, from me, that was from the Queen and King of Heaven.
Oh, Devi, it's so beautiful. You speaking is an activation in itself. It really is. And I encourage everyone to come back and listen to this again, because we'll get more of it. If there's something that is new or not thought of or unconscious that you've mentioned, listening to this again will absolutely resonate. I've been taking notes, and it really, in a nutshell, it really seems that the body is where we need to focus on. The body is where, and the DNA and the RNA, as you mentioned, is where those cellular memories are. And so if we've not entered the body so deeply because of the root chakra, for example, and the pain what's happened there. I find that very interesting because many, I think everyone has root chakra issues. And so I guess the next question would be, when we deal with the shadow masculine and the shadow feminine, and we heal those distortions and we clear out the ancestral karma, that is the liberation that allows more of this divine light to come in. And actually our DNA will change. That will activate the other strands of DNA. Yes.
Oh, yes. And so there's 3 progressions, right? Or 3 pilgrimages into the Holy of the Holies within our bodies. You can see it as first stage purification is of your own karmic, right? Conditioning. And once that is like purified, right, with the radiant infusions of what Andrew Harvey calls organic light. And therefore, that organic light is not a psychic frequency, right? And it's not an Akashic frequency. It is a pulsing resonance, right? It's in harmony and partnership with the wisdom and the intelligence of the natural world. And so the foundation of the ancient ones is this practice called Planetary Tantra. And that you don't clear, right, your individual miasms without having an extremely intimate and shamanic relationship with the body of love within the natural world. Nature is this pristine template, and we're along for the ride, right, of this planetary ascension graduation process that she is navigating. And therefore, in service to that greater wave of love that is penetrating into every orifice of all creation, we have that responsibility to clean up our own database. Yes. And you will see, right, and the collective bones of our ancestors, once you have that awakening for your individual galvanization of these forces of light within your own body, which is multidimensional tantra with your own soul. So we call it romancing of the beloved within. Then we move into extricating these reservoirs of what is called the culture of conflict. And that is this illusion of scarcity or this illusion of competition. And you see it in the economic systems of inequity. However, it's still the male and female energies in opposition and not true trust and surrender and cooperation with each other. And that is so ancient. This is where, self-forgiveness becomes this catharsis of like, I'm not responsible for this ancestral, right? Cumulative situation. And so this is where the infusion of a large degree of divine innocence of like, all right, I'm rolling up my sleeves here and I'm moving into the purification of these ancestral layers. However, I'm not going to hold myself responsible for this collective, it's not going to be in English. That is the ancient language of Gaia, right? So now Gaia's, right, carrying this conversation with us. The human species, right? If you look at all the ancestral family lines, the human species has been struggling, right, with relating with the release of that myth, right, of the fall from grace, which is represented in the Judeo-Christian mythology of, Adam and Eve being kicked out of the Garden of Eden, And then, it's been downhill ever since. So yes, the bodhisattvas are here, and they are this dispensation of grace to basically say, look, cut yourself some slack. It's really not your fault. That this is not your issue. It's our situation. And then that can move us into models of cooperation for large-scale ancestral healing endeavors. And this is why we bring in, at some point, the star ancestors. Because when we scanned all of the timelines, we basically said, uh-oh, the human race won't know how to navigate itself out of this cumulative species issue. And then that's when we have all of those indigenous wisdom keepers, like the Hopi nations and the other First Nations traditions and Native American traditions that speak of their star relatives, and the cosmic grandmothers and the cosmic grandfathers that are basically here to bring love infusions to the family line, where all they have known is suffering. How are you supposed to expect the human race to overcome, thousands and thousands of years of starvation and war and, nations and arguments and, the whole, troubling scenario of, you'll see rare avatars, like break through this, membrane of amnesia or forgetting. However, you don't really see large populations, right, liberating themselves like a group of bodhisattvas, right, all having these transcendent nirvanic experiences together, right, like a village, because of that collective residue, shall we say. So the third layer, which is the purification of the archetypal karmic imprints, is where we can have the greatest infusions of divine love's power. And divine love's power is fierce grace and fierce love, because it will get in the face, right, of that misuse of magical power and basically say, I no longer give you permission to run the show in my body from behind the scenes, because I'm revoking, right, any and all, as we say, inauthentic contracts. So what if I were to say that a lot of people are still running agreement fields that are not actually their duties anymore? And therefore, we see it in terms of like the galactic renegotiation of these collective soul contracts that are actually no longer true. It's one thing to, 59 lifetimes ago, to agree to have an experience of separation. That one exploration of that form of a veil did not mean that that veil was supposed to like play itself out ad infinitum. So when we really start turning around and facing what you would call archetypal karmic imprints, then we really start moving into the real divine justice league. And divine justice can step in with the blade of truth. We also refer to it as Excalibur, and cutting ourselves free of what you would call obligations that are no longer, right, accurate. Because, like I said, just because you gave permission in one timeline doesn't mean that you gave permission in 529 timelines. That's not accurate. And that's cheating, right? So there's the deprogramming process. Once we start clarifying de la korra yedea so de balayin, an archetypal karmic imprint, then the old false, right, contracts begin to crumble. And then you have large scale, right? Opt out, opt out, opt out, opt out. right? And it's not like this spiritual like aloofness of like, oh, well, I run a higher frequency than that fear timeline. You know, that's not actually, pulling up the sleeves and addressing, the systemic issues, right? It's not about our individual awakening out of those destructive, distortions. It's like when you really, right, neutralize those false contracts, then you will be proxy for, maybe, 1029 souls getting the realization, I don't have to play that game anymore. Never underestimate, right, a full body extrication from those old archetypal karmic imprints. Then you're going to start having bodies of people getting the epiphany. That's not real. I've been giving away my power and being impacted by large-scale cultural mind control programs, which has nothing to do with the truth of like who I really am or why I'm actually here. So it's like breaking the spell. And it's not the individual, breaking of the ancestral curses. It's the deconditioning of this societal hypnotism by those old artifices that just want, sheeples in the population to give them a suggestion and then have that artificial intelligence run those scenarios of, transhumanism, for example. And people wouldn't realize that they're forfeiting their autonomy with the beloved I am if you participate in that convenience of, what looks like a great idea, however, will have significant consequences if you could see the whole thing play itself out, 10 to 15 or 20 or 30 years from now. There's certain parties on the planet that would just like to vaporize our access to this organic state of pleasure, moving out of the pain principle and moving into what Dr. Riane Eisler calls sacred pleasure. So basically, all of the old archetypal karmic imprints have some form of a pain body affiliated with them. And as we have seen in other lineages, it's not just love, it's ecstatic love, right? That can move beneath the heart into the solar plexus and into, the belly of the god and the goddess and into that fabric of the root foundation. And we can actually start accessing nirvanic states of communion and deep connective tissues with the needs of the living planetary body. So you remove yourself from individual karma, archetypal karma, ancestral karma, and then we're in that space of deep presencing with these temples of love that are now returning. Ancient promises now being fulfilled. So it would be the equivalent of, where would you imagine yourself to now be the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy? Because in the release of that individual and ancestral and archetypal karmic imprints, now you're moving into virgin territory and reclaiming the principles of sacred pleasure, which then neutralizes what Eckhart Tolle calls the collective pain body. Now that's a huge mantle.
Yes, but it makes perfect sense to us, and I think we get it. We do. We absolutely do. I want to say we're going to have you back very soon for a live Q&A.
Yes.
Our audience can ask those questions as well. And, when I ask, my goodness, how do we do this? Well, you just showed us how we do this. It's those three phases: the individual, the ancestral, which is in our bodies, that we raised our hand to come into this ancestral line to clear. and it's the archetypes of the collective. And so, wow. And so then that's the work. That is what's before us. And I want to have you share more on a program that actually goes very deep into these topics and this work. And you've created something that's 5 hours long. That's how deep it can go.
We went deep dish.
That's what's required to get through the many layers. And I'm sure that, that's a condensed version, 5 hours. I mean, it goes deep and there's still work that can be done, but wouldn't it be wonderful if this work that is done by those on this show, those who are listening, those who choose to participate in your program, then we're part of that collective that will step into this new, fertile ground and neutralize that old world. This is really almost like a roadmap to that quantum level that we need, that we're studying and we're looking at. And so I find it really beautiful, because as complex as it is, as how many thousands of years has this conditioning come into our program, into our paradigm, you've just given a really fresh picture about how that paradigm is shifting and changing, and then the work that is required. So tell us about your program, the special
Well,
offer.
it's two-pronged, right? There's intense devotion and dedication, which is the work side.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the miraculous and the magical, which is what we would call that arc of grace.
Effortless.
It's important to realize that the walk-ins come to remind us that there is this galactic divine plan that is overseeing the custodianship, right, of the beloved children on this planet, because we're all divine children of the primordial mother father. So in the Star Nations ancestral healing, people are actually granted access to enter into the royal throne room, right, with the supernal mother and the supernal father, the entire galaxy, right? And from that exposure, right, to this original arc of grace, then there's the epiphany and the eureka of, yes, it takes tremendous valor and bravery and commitment and dedication and devotion to set free what no longer serves. However, there's a massive up-leveling, right, of alliances that are available to assist if people are willing to show up to receive that additional exponential assistance. We say that there's a minimum of 444,000 and more, right? Masters, angels, teachers, and guides that work with these purification pathways on a large scale, right? Of releasing what has been in the collective genetic old operating systems. So like a Star Nations ancestral healing is moving out of your old human operating system, right, and into the divine operating system, which then gives you access to integrating and alchemizing your quantum biospiritual circuitry. How do you bring your full multidimensional consciousness down into your human temple if you have all of those levels of patternings, right, that are in some form of resistance, and it's unconscious and it's unintentional and it's nobody's fault, but there's this argument, right, of not fully trusting our bodies with our spirits, okay? And that's like going on underneath the table, and you see it even in gurus. Why are there gurus that are so vicious? Why are they so freaking brilliant, in one setting, and then behind the scenes, they treat their staff like dirt, okay? So we have many, what you would call gurus on this planet that have been cruel, okay? So there's your indication that most of this, right, is going on, right, in the basement. So how do we bring this full multidimensional love body down into the basement, right, where love has never gone before, because you've had a lot of what you would call intellectual enlightenment that isn't full embodied, wholeness and union of this deep love between the masculine and feminine principles, right? And those like really dark archives getting the help that they need, so that we're not all illuminated in one setting and completely backwards, right? In another setting. And that's just one example, right? Where we don't walk our talk in that constancy of self-love and self-care and self-kindness, because we treat others how we treat ourselves. So how can we radically fall in love with ourselves so we can radically be this presence of loving grace with all other, right, categories of our journey? And that's what the Star Nations have agreed to get in and rooter those collective soul family core wounds, collective soul group core wounds that have been keeping us separating inadvertently, right? Or not able to fully come into that Tantra yoga in its purest expression. We're not minimizing that the people that are drawn to my work are already pretty awake. Okay, you really can't comprehend what I'm talking about here unless you've gone through, some pretty profound transformational experiences. And when you enter into this kind of a gestalt, right, then you're sitting as a proxy or in surrogation for thousands and thousands of souls, right, that would not be able to navigate this kind of territory of acquiescing in humility, right? Even at our best, we couldn't figure out where this all got, like inverted, where love actually created for a lot of people more pain, and that's why a lot of twin flame relationships don't work out, because of that inversion, right, that's still running in the basement. So what would happen to a planet if true sacred union beloveds were able to successfully navigate, right, their dharmic contracts with the whole, quantum love body of the whole planet, right? So just start there. And this is kind of assisting those souls that are already, like I said, very deep into their ascension rites of passage, and yet have not been able to reach, that Achilles heel, right? That's kind of been your problem spot, timeline after timeline, lifetime after lifetime, that sore spot that you just haven't been able to reach. This is what the galactic grandmothers and galactic grandfathers would like to help us neutralize, so we can walk across that threshold into that royal throne room of regal embodiment inside of our own awakening quantum communion. And that quantum communion that you'll experience, particularly in the second half of the series, is this realization of where you've been keeping love from yourself, that you didn't even know that you were keeping love from yourself. So see what I mean? People are already very activated and animated in all of these spiritual abilities. And even with all of those spiritual gifts and all of those spiritual treasures, there's still a dimension of themselves that they keep, right, like hidden in the tower, that's like cut off from this ultimate promise that no matter how much we fell into the illusion of separation, that love would find its way to reach us, like that breaking of the sleeping death, like of a Snow White or Sleeping Beauty and other female characters. But imagine that you have a soul fragment that's stuck, right, in the tower, and it's completely in like a coma, right? And you've never been able to reach that part of you in that hidden coma until you receive true love's kiss. And yet it's not an outside person. What's coming to awaken you in that true love's kiss or that nashak is your own quantum, multidimensional consciousness that's saying, wake up, my child. You are loved, even in those areas where you thought you were forsaken. And yet don't remember that you put yourself in quarantine, right? Where did you abandon, right? Maybe that aspect of yourself because couldn't find a way to trust this divine miracle that all forms of separation can and are scheduled to be penetrated by the law of grace. And this is what our allies, the Star Nation ancestors, are here to extricate you, right, from the tragic fairy tale. Right? And you get to have this experience of the hero or the shero that comes and sets you free, just your multidimensional self, basically from the future, which then will help people realize all of my walk-ins are basically from my future self.
Yes.
And
Wow.
so, right, in this quantum grace, right, I awakened in each walk-in, not to an outside, right, consciousness of my celestial divinity. It's this awakened avatar of the galactic divine human from the future that's coming and assisting me, and therefore assisting us in this sacred present moment of the now. So if I went through this process, you don't need to have a walk-in, right, to have this experience with yourself. So I'm prototyping it so that we can create, right, this receivership without having to go through the radical, right, navigating of how do you allow human anatomy and physiology to receive the galactic cosmology on a biological level. And usually the galactic is vibrating at such a high frequency of light that the humans, like in trepidation, we're like, well, what am I supposed to do with that much light, right? And so we're building up capacity, right? You do all that cleanup in the first module. Second module is, how do I acquiesce to receive cosmic, celestial, interstellar, quantum love and grace so that I can reach into those deepest pockets of my own hidden darkness that I don't remember because the core wound is so deeply buried. And the invitation is, please don't go about this just for yourself. Please realize that this is an opportunity to be of service to many, 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 many other souls that wouldn't have the wherewithal or the stamina to look a divine miracle of this measure and accept the gift. Like some people will really run from the light if it's too bright, and all those near-death experiences are overwhelmed. This is overwhelming love and light. However, if you're being called to have this transfiguration, right, or metamorphosis, then it's on behalf of the collective. That as you let it in for yourself as an individual, I guarantee you're making it so much easier for all those that have run away from this magnitude of divine love, because the human does tremble before the almighty awe. It takes, right, lots of courage to let it in. Can I let myself be this loved? Can I let myself be, completely, engulfed in that ecstasy of the penetration of the core wound with that divine amrita, which is the resolution of that original obstacle that each and every one of us agreed to set free. and in setting whatever that chosen sacred wound is, the contribution that your dharmic gifts then bring back to society, like Joseph Campbell says in the stage 12 of the hero's journey, or Maureen Murdoch says, stage 11 of the shero's journey, the heroine's journey, then your leadership capacity to then step in as a divine grandmother and divine grandfather for humanity as we enter into the earth shifts is huge leadership presence, that you are the shepherd, that you are the shepherdess, right? For the others that then quake and tremble and massive societal changes that, are intimidating for us all. So this isn't like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go do ancestral healing so I can, benefit myself or my family. This is cultural transformation that's on the table. That's the easiest way I can simplify it. And then, as Lauren said, Simon Hinton and I will be doing a transmission next month because we're moving, of course, through Dia de los Muertos, All Hallows Eve, right? Samhain, Ancestors Night, and into the 11/11 of November, and then into the 12/12 of December, and then into, of course, the most amazing winter solstice we've ever had on this entire planetary realm. So I bow to you, Lauren. I don't normally get to give transmissions of this scope. So who you be in your quantum conversations is an astronomical presence, right, of opportunity for people who join you, because the arms that are embracing us today in this podcast is huge invitation for those that can hear it.
We are excited. Actually, thank you. I would say that those who have been seeking their purpose, this is beyond purpose. This is galactic responsibility, galactic mission. And it's so beautiful that we're receiving the help from the star nations with this ancestral clearing so that we can return to this immense love for ourselves, but it's for everyone. It's for all of us. Thank you. I am really excited for this. Again, this work, it's almost like the epitome of the work. It's advanced, but anybody can do it. It meets anybody where they are. And again,
Yes.
anybody watching this at this moment gets it. And I mean, it's just a wonderful, wonderful program and a wonderful opportunity for people. So thank you for making it possible. And thank you for sharing this beautiful wisdom. The light language from Gaia, Mother Earth, was so beautiful. When we have you back, we'll be asking for more of that. No, I know she'll come through again. Well, thank you for this. Again, this is an investment that people can use in their life, and we want to make it very easy for people to be a part of this. If this is resonating with your heart, sign up for this, get into it. It's all online. You'll get immediate access to it. You can begin the work. And if you need help, we have a 2-payment plan. This month, next month, 2 payments, easy. We want you to take part in this. We know that this resonates with your soul, with your heart. Wow. Okay. Beautiful.
And the numerology, right, of this, the twin eights, right, the infinity loop, right, of the divine feminine and the infinity loop of the divine masculine. So even what you would call the sacred marketplace is set up, right, even going through the process of enrolling these twin eights, right, it's starting, right, that entrainment of like, you're embarking on something very, very special, because it's not me. I am literally just a conduit for your divine parents in heaven, and they really facilitate the whole thing. So I give them total props, total credit. It's really their invitation for those that show up. So if you realize that this is very rare, that the whole thing is facilitated by our, beloved twin primes, twin sources of all that is, this is like their commitment to all of the humans that are ready to go through this shape-shifting process with them. Not just the star ancestors, right? Because it's really the original twin flames of the entire universe that's guiding the course, and that's a truth. So come meet your star ancestors and come meet your divine parents, because all of them are in this together.
And become radically in love with yourself and see
Yes.
where you've been keeping this from yourself. There's something very deep that resonates within that phrase that we each individually get. This has been uplifting and enlightening. We cannot wait to see you again. We'll talk offline about other things that we can do, because I think it's just really special. And we're going to be doing something for the solstice as well. And we're going to invite you for that, because yes, we're excited for this.
Ooh la la.
So thank you, Reverend Devi Grace. As we say goodbye, I just want to give you a quick moment for final thoughts.
Well, I would say that feel, even though I'm in front of the camera, I bow in reverence to each and every one that comes to this conversation, because it means that you already said yes to the original mother, father, source code of all life. So nothing would bring me greater joy than to be of service to you in their name. Thank you for saying yes to them. And we all just, like, reverence, not just respect, like at this point, reverence at the holy gates.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. You said yes, we all said yes. We're excited. We hope that you join us on this journey. The link is here on this webpage or wherever you're watching or listening to this program. And we are excited. We are excited for this next phase. Please join us. And we thank you for your light, for your love, for all of humanity that we raised our hand to come here to this planet to take care of. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Devi.
To be continued.
To be continued. Namaste. Thank you for listening to this quantum conversation, and thank you for dancing with us to the cosmic heart. As we raise our own vibration, we raise the vibration of the planet. This show is dedicated to you and all awakening hearts, as we are here to shine our bright light and amplify our love. Access all quantum conversations, special offers from our guests, and online healing retreats by visiting acoustichealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and from my sacred heart to yours, I honor your magnificent love and light. We leave you now with music from the universe. Music literally created by the universe, as musical notes were assigned to mathematical equations. The result is this beautiful music, available at acoustichealth.com. Namaste.